Hi, I'm Rob, and Israel is not the problem. Israel is not the problem. Let me explain. First, as I've said repeatedly, I don't understand why the atrocities of World War II, the Holocaust, the ethnic cleansing or the attempted ethnic cleansing of the Jewish people, why all that was taken on by Germany, Italy, the Axis versus the Allied, all those countries that assisted in the Holocaust were European nations. And at the end of that process, at the end of that war, the powers that be, the Five Eyes, decided that what they would do is give the Jewish people their own homeland, and they would do this off of biblical text, with no regard to the legality of the Palestinians, with no regard to the Arabs, where a lot of Jewish people actually fled and were protected, without any regard and on biblical text that nobody can prove. The Jewish people were given land, occupied, farmed, and by most definitions, legally owned by the Palestinian people. And so that hasn't changed, and that's the basis of a lot of the fighting. And on one side of the fence, you've got the Palestinians trying to liberate their land from an occupied force. That's according to the UN Charter. And then you've got Israel, who's, in their view, is trying to fight for their existence. But why does that mean Israel is not the problem? Well, because they're not the problem. Israel is doing what every other country does. They lobby the American government. Sure, they've got AIPAC. We're not going to lie about that. They've got AIPAC. They've got a lobbying arm that is not subject to the same scrutiny as any other foreign lobby, whether their lobby is American lawyers or not. So Israel isn't really doing anything different than Saudi Arabia or anybody else. In fact, if you want to be honest, Russia is killing people. Ukraine is killing people. The Ukrainian government is literally going in its own cities and kidnapping its own citizens to fight who don't want to fight. That's what they're doing. They're literally kidnapping their own citizens to fight. They're forcing them on the front lines, just as Russia is. North Korea's got nuclear weapons. We're not talking about the Saudis and their relentless campaign against Sudan and the Houthis. So Saudi Arabia, UAE, Dubai, all those countries are also lobbying America, and they're getting military weapons and equipment. And then finally, the U.S. government. U.S. government dropped bombs on a school. And the U.S. government killed 500,000 Iraqi civilians during 20 years of war in Iraq. So the issue isn't Israel. So I think the reality is everybody's out here, are you taking Israeli funds? Are you taking AIPAC funds? That's not the issue. These politicians are taking funds from everyone. The issue is, are they taking funds to sell you out? And that seems to be clear as day. There seems to be a lot of politicians who seem to take AIPAC funding, and then that is really their only funding. They don't, even if they're taking money from other people, other places, they seem to only have a loyalty for Israel. That's not Israel's fault. That's the politicians that you elect to go to Congress who rely on millions of dollars of AIPAC funding to get elected. Maybe if you said, hey, if you take AIPAC funding or if you betray us, we're not going to vote for you. But nobody's doing that. Everybody's coming out here and they're conflating the issue. Yes, genocide is horrible. What has been going on to the Palestinian people for the last 50 years is horrible. What we're doing in America to the Iranian people is horrible. What the Americans did with the Shah and how the Shah brutalized his own people was horrible. But to say that all of this is Israel's fault because they put money on the table, but they're not the ones selling us out. It's our own leaders. It's our politicians. It's Cory Booker. It's freaking Donald Trump. It's J.D. Vance. It's Hillary Clinton. It's all of them. They're all taking money, which is inherently not wrong, but then they're doing nothing for you while they're doing everything for them. So how do we fix this? There's really only one way to fix this, and that is to overturn Citizens United. Citizens United is what put a lot of money into the political process and started substituting Americans' voting power with corporate dollars. It substituted America's voting population, its electorate, with corporate money. And so now corporate money governs everything, whether that's building bombs, whether that's building communication systems, whether that's supporting AIPAC through the donations that they give to members of the House and the Senate. That's what we do. And so I just think that blaming Israel is the wrong issue. What I say is that any American president or any American government giving weapons to any country on our behalf, those weapons and their use should be governed under the same terms that govern our use. But I don't know if that's even true anymore, because as we saw, Donald Trump and Ego Pete bombed a school full of girls that they knew was full of girls. And they did it for the same reason that the Israeli IDF bombs civilians. Because the thought is if you kill the civilians will rise up and overthrow their government. Even though the civilians don't have any guns to overthrow their government, that's the thought process. And it's just incorrect. The only way citizens overthrow a government is if they have the weapons to overthrow the government with. And nobody's going to provide any country, their citizens, with the weapons to overthrow their government. Except for Israel and the United States, who, we do that to Iran. But my thing is, Israel is not the problem. Israel, at the end of the day, is advocating for the goals of the Jewish state, and what they have been able to do is effectively buy the American government so that the American government just works for them. So to me, that's not an Israel problem. That's Americans selling Americans out. I'm Rob. You guys have a good day, and bye for now.